Concerns me in terms of it, what kind of precedent it sets and how the rest of the world looks at us as a nation of laws and justice. You're not going to see in our administration that kind of approach to pardons, nor are you going to see in our administration the approach to making policy by tweets. It's just going to be a totally different way in which we approach the justice system.
Have you ever heard of somebody getting a preemptive pardon who was innocent of all crime? Who's just an innocent person? Have you ever heard of that? Just somebody getting a blanket pardon and they're an innocent person?
But no, it's the president's own family. It's people that have been covering up for the president in addition to his own family.
A few moments later.
We have some breaking news we want to share related to all this. President Biden pardoning his family members minutes before President-elect Trump is sworn in. I want to go to our senior legal correspondent, Laura Jarrett. Laura, walk us through it.
Yeah, Lester, a rare and sweeping pardon here from the president in just his final moments while he still occupies that office, pardoning all of his living siblings and their spouses, including James Biden, Sarah Biden, Valerie Owens Biden, his sister, her husband, John T. Owens, and his brother, Francis Biden. Now, Lester, none of these people have been charged with crimes, but he says he's doing this because there is partisan politics.
So Joe Biden pardons his whole family, and we're supposed to think they committed no crime. Let's talk about it. Today we're talking about Joe Biden pardoning not Hunter, but also his family, like his brothers, his sisters, their spouses, and what I'm calling the Biden crime family get out of jail free card.
Pardoned today were Biden's brother and sister-in-law, James and Sarah Jones Biden, his sister, Valerie Biden Owens, and her husband, John. Frank Biden, his youngest sibling, was also included. So too was Dr. Anthony Fauci, the US COVID response chief, including former Capitol Police officer Harry Dunn. And from across the aisle, Republicans who turned their back on Trump, Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney. Biden said, "My family has been subjected to unrelenting attacks and threats. Unfortunately, I have no reason to believe these attacks will end."
Now, the pardon extends from January 1st, 2014, all the way through January 20th, 2025. And let's make no mistake, these are preemptive pardons. No one has even been charged. There's no investigation. This is just, hey, you're pardoned because I feel like. Now, when it comes to the subject of preemptive pardons and pardoning your family, when Trump lost the election of Joe Biden back in 2020, the Democrats were all the rage because they were saying Trump is going to pardon his family before leaving office. Remember that?
This is all unfolding as the president is mulling over his political future and the potential legal exposure of those around him.
With his time in office coming to a close, President Trump has discussed potentially pardoning 3 of his children, his son-in-law, and his attorney, Rudy Giuliani. While their potential criminal exposure is unclear, sources tell CNN Trump has talked about pardoning those around him preemptively because he's concerned prosecutors will target them once he's out of office.
I've heard no mention of any pardons in any conversations I've had in the White House other than the pardon of Lieutenant General Michael Flynn.
Other allies are encouraging Trump to not only pardon his family, but himself.
My question is, why wouldn't he just pardon himself and his family on the way out the door? Because I think he would be right to do so because these people are nuts.
Now, Trump didn't pardon any of his family. Why? Because they didn't commit any crimes. So you don't need to pardon people who don't commit crimes. Makes sense, right? And the Democrats on places like MSNBC were constantly saying that, hey, if you give someone a pardon, even a preemptive pardon, that means they're likely guilty of a crime.
Is there an innocent explanation for someone to seek preemptive pardons for family members? Would you do that if you knew you were innocent and just worried about outside forces?
The answer to that is going to be no. If you haven't done anything wrong, you sit there and go, what do you need a preemptive pardon for?
If he pardons people preemptively, he's essentially telling the public that these people people have committed crimes, and we may not be aware of what they are, but the pardon is clear evidence that crimes have been committed.
I imagine if he decides to issue these preemptive pardons, it will be cast in a way that he is protecting his family and protecting their reputations from, villainous exterior forces that are against him.
First off, we should just take a deep breath and acknowledge the audacity of a president who's so clearly concerned about his own criminal culpability and that of his family members that pardons are a major obsession with him.
The idea of a kind of prospective pardon, this sort of permanent federal get-out-of-jail-free card, that seems to be what we're talking about in the case of this, right, with Giuliani and his 3 eldest children who, as far as we know, have not been convicted of a crime. Maybe they've committed a lot and they don't want to face action. I don't know. It's weird. I wouldn't ask for a pardon. I don't think I deserve one because I don't think I've done anything criminal. But where does that come from? That concept that you can just kind of wave your magic pardon wand.
We have Tish James. We have Xavier Becerra. Mimi Roca is literally my DA in my town. There will be opportunities to prosecute these people regardless if they abuse the pardon power as they are thinking.
Hopefully, Ellie, there will be a skyfall on this entire crime family, and there will be another day for them to die.
The president does indeed pardon, let's say, Rudy Giuliani or any members of his family. Would you see that, and I asked Preet Bharara this question, as essentially an admission of guilt?
I certainly would view it that way. I think millions of Americans would view it that way. If there was no belief in criminality, why would he think a pardon was necessary?
All right, so now this brings me to ground news. See, what you just saw was how the politics has to play out, right? The Democrats are always going to be hypocritical, and so are the Republicans to a sense. But you don't expect your news media organizations to be hypocritical, right? You expect for them to give you the facts about the situation, no matter what the facts are. But, as I always say, it's not about the facts of the story a lot of the times. It's about how the facts are presented, the narrative. And here is ground news. You're going to see some crazy narratives. So here it's Biden pardons family and final minutes in office. And when you scroll down, we've made this left wing and we've gone to sort by bias. So this is the farthest left wing nonsense. And this is the way they describe Biden's last minute pardons. At least Biden made some preemptive pardons on his way out of the door. James Comer pitches a MAGA fit after Biden pardons his family members. Joe Biden issues unconditional preemptive pardons for his family during inauguration. Breaking: President Biden pardons families. Now, that's all they're saying. Biden pardons families, Biden pardons families. It's really like a big nothing burger. This one even gives like a little excuse for Biden. Biden issues preemptive pardons against Trump retribution. But now, when we look at the right side of the aisle, like the New York Post, listen to what they say. Biden announces blanket pardon for his brother James, burying family influence peddling probe for good. Joe Biden issues sweeping pardons for her entire family. Dr. Fauci, they make sure the Biden crime family cashes out after 52 years. Washington Examiner. Now let's keep it real. Who do you think is describing what happened best? Now this is why ground news is so important, because they expose this political bias that you just saw. Everybody's playing with the same facts, but the way those facts are presented are dramatically different based on the news organization you get your news from. That's why ground news allows you to see them all, to see all the spin, so you can make a better decision for yourself and be better informed about what the facts are versus the spin. Now with ground news, you can even go deeper. For instance, you can see how many people are covering it. Here, there's 445 different sources, from the New York Post to the Washington Examiner, you name it, they're probably here listed on ground news. You also get this bias distribution where you can see the stories being covered mostly on the right and center side of the aisle, and the left wing is not covering it as much. Even though there are a lot more left wing sources, they just seem to not be interested in this particular story. Now see, when I change the story to Trump pardons nearly all of January 6 rioters, you can see how the coverage jumps from 18% for the Biden pardon his family to 32% of the sources now are left-wing sources covering this story because obviously it's not good for Republicans. So even the stories that are being covered have this political bias around them. Now, if you really want to know the news behind the news, go to ground.news/Nate and they'll give you 40% off their Vantage plan. Now, this is the plan I use to access all these features, and I'm telling you, it's been worth it for me, and I hope it's worth it for you. Go to ground.news/Nate to get that 40% off. And thanks to Ground News for sponsoring this video. So now that we've talked about the spin, now let's look at the pardons themselves. Now first, if you look at Hunter Biden's pardon, as we have it here on the screen, it starts on January 1st, 2014. And here is the pardon for all of his other family members, and that starts on January 1st, 2014. Now, when you look into Hunter Biden's scandals and business ventures, it all starts in 2014 with a Ukrainian energy company called Burisma. See, Hunter Biden served on the board of this energy company from about 2014 to 2019 and earned about $1.2 million in that role. Now, Hunter didn't have any experience or anything like that. This was obviously a hookup because at the time his father was vice president. But now something interesting started happening when Congress started looking into the president's family's business dealings. They found Hunter Biden was really involved with James Biden and other family members in terms of trafficking cash from, let's say, foreign entities into the United States. Here is CBS's investigation of it.
CBS News has learned that more than 150 transactions involving either Hunter or James Biden's global business affairs were flagged as concerning by U.S. banks for further review. Some of those concerns included large wire transfer. James Biden has worked as an entrepreneur and recently in the healthcare industry.
We will focus on James Biden, the president's brother.
This week, Grassley released bank records indicating James Biden's company, the Lion Hall Group, was paid directly by a Chinese-financed consulting firm.
These records come directly from the banks, no third party.
You're absolutely right.
Hunter and James Biden were promised retainers for their China work totaling $165,000 a month in 2017 after Joe Biden left the vice presidency. This 2019 subpoena, verified by CBS News, shows federal investigators also sought Hunter and James Biden's business records from a major U.S. bank dating back to 2014 as part of a separate probe by the U.S. attorney in Delaware into possible violations of tax and foreign lobbying law.
So now you got Hunter and James Biden all with these crazy transactions, but you also see other members of the Biden family involved in other transactions. Here is a U.S. Senator explaining it.
Look, we did a report. We were very transparent with the report. I said, and was attacked by the media for saying it, that 10 different Biden family members received incremental payments that had been laundered through shell companies into their personal accounts. Now, 6 of them have just gotten pardoned. The 5 that President Biden pardoned going out the door, plus his son. In fact, the 3 spouses that were pardoned, the only place in the world their names were mentioned was in our report and in my book, all the president's money. We detail who got the money, and in the footnotes and endnotes it shows the pattern of how they got it. So even President Biden's own Department of Justice, when they were arguing against the January 6th releasing the January 6th prisoners, they said that a pardon would be an admission of guilt. And I think that when you're talking about Joe Biden's family, it's obviously an admission of guilt that he pardoned 6 of them preemptively. I mean, the sister, the in-laws and 1 brother had never been charged with anything. We only charged Hunter and Jim Biden with perjury and lying to Congress. Obviously, there are other crimes, and I write about it in the book, violation of Foreign Agents Registration Act, money laundering, tax evasion, that we believe all the family could be charged for. And I believe that someone read my book that was advising Joe Biden, and that's why they issued those pardons.
So since 2014, it seems like all of these people were involved in some real shady stuff, and Joe Biden said, hey, we're going to pardon them from all the way back in 2014 when all this shady stuff occurred. Now, after these pardons have been issued, one of the strangest things to me is how people can be total hypocrites. Sunny Hostin of The View, for instance. Listen to what she says about Joe Biden pardoning his family at the last second.
Because I was not offended by Biden pardoning his family, because I think, just like Maya Angelou said, when someone shows you or tells you who they are, believe them the first time. Right. We've already had a Trump presidency. We know that this administration is a vengeful one. We know this is a vengeful man. And if I can protect me and mine, I would do that. And so I think we need to show Joe Biden some grace.
Let me know if you think Sonny's right. Let me know if we need to show Joe Biden some grace. But to be honest with you, at the end of the day, I think that this proves the crime family, because when Trump had the ability to pardon his family, he didn't. He absolutely didn't, because they hadn't done anything wrong. If you don't commit crimes, you don't need pardons. So tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section. Tell me if you disagree with me, because I think this proves everything that people have been saying. And I think the Democrats have to take the L on this one.